tonight, comprehensive coverage of Donald Trump's historic victory with insights, repercussions and reaction from around the world. Good evening, I'm Dowling. This is ABC News, Northern Territory. Also tonight, the Prime Minister taking the first steps towards banning children from social media. The federal court decide how to divide over $200 million to Indigenous workers paid little or nothing for their labour. And Olympic breakdance sensation Ray Gunn announces her retirement from competition. We start tonight in the US with Donald Trump spending his first day as US President-elect largely out of the public eye, taking calls of congratulations from world leaders and his defeated opponent. His emphatic political comeback hailed not only as an historic victory, but also a transformational force set to reshape the future of America. We have correspondents throughout the United States unpacking the appeal behind the Republicans' election-winning pitch. Jade McMillan begins our coverage with the flood of support in Trump's home state of Florida.
Celebrations in the streets for an historic victory. Donald Trump's supporters flocked to his Mar-a-Lago home in Florida.
First thing I did is cry. Tears of happiness. We won!
Trump won!
We couldn't keep our excitement to ourselves. So I said, let's go to Mar-a-Lago, and he said, okay.
What had been tipped to be a very close race was instead a decisive win. Donald Trump's son Eric sharing a behind-the-scenes snapshot of the moment before the 45th president addressed the nation about becoming the 47th.
Hey, look what happened. Is this crazy?
Donald Trump repeatedly insulted Kamala Harris on the campaign trail. But when the Vice President called to congratulate him, a spokesman said he acknowledged her strength, professionalism and tenacity. The man who replaced him 4 years ago also reached out to commit to a smooth and peaceful transition of power.
It is now official. CNN projects that Donald Trump has been elected president.
The president-elect made the economy and immigration central to his campaign, promising major new tariffs on imports and the largest mass deportation of undocumented immigrants in US history. When Donald Trump was first elected in 2016, he was a political outsider. This time, he has experience and a much better understanding of how to achieve his goals, as well as what he describes as a powerful mandate. Implementing his agenda has been made easier after Republicans took control of the Senate. The House of Representatives is still too close to call.
What I'm most impressed by is not just the size of the victory, I know the number's still growing, but the way Donald Trump won this election. He won it by fundamentally remaking the Republican Party.
The first ever convicted felon to be elected president is supposed to be sentenced on the New York hush money charges later this month. But it's unclear whether that will go ahead. And the federal cases against him are reportedly being wound down. Another win in the eyes of his many backers. Jade McMillan, ABC News, West Palm Beach.
The defiant and dignified Kamala Harris has conceded defeat to Donald Trump after the crushing loss. Her speech to supporters at Howard University in Washington was part rallying cry and part pep talk.
It was to have been a big outdoor party. Instead, it felt more like a wake.
Folks are feeling and experiencing a range of emotions right now. I get it.
Kamala Harris confirmed she'd conceded defeat, getting in a dig at her opponent.
When we lose an election, we accept the results.
Then came a rallying call.
While I concede this election, I do not concede the fight that fueled this campaign.
This was fighting talk from the Vice President, but within the Democratic Party, the soul-searching and the recriminations are just beginning. It must ask itself who or what is to blame for this bitter loss and why its vision for the future of this country did not speak to more Americans.
This should have been a landslide victory, and it wasn't.
And the Democrats need to do a better job of reaching working class voters.
As the post-mortem continues, there will also be talk of how, as sitting Vice President, Kamala Harris struggled to differentiate herself from an unpopular administration.
Would you have done something differently than President Biden during the past 4 years?
There is not a thing that comes to mind.
And the former prosecutor often struggled to articulate her positions.
To understand where we exist in the history and in the moment as it relates not only to the past but the future.
Celebrities lined up to endorse her.
Let's go, Kamala!
But all to no avail.
She gave her all, and that's all we can ask for.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just devastated.
Preparations for Donald Trump's inauguration have already begun as Kamala Harris returns to her day job as deputy to the man she replaced. Barbara Miller, ABC News, Washington.
Mr. Trump will enter his second term as president of the US in a vastly different domestic and global environment to his first in 2016. Here's Global Affairs editor John Lyons.
This is, without doubt, an emphatic victory by Donald Trump. But having pulled off one of the most remarkable political comebacks in modern times, Trump is now in full control of the Republican Party and will wield huge influence over the Senate and the House. With powerful backers such as Elon Musk, Trump will now set about implementing his agenda: smaller government, less regulation, a tougher border policy, a crackdown on crime, more support for Israel, less support for Ukraine, and a much more aggressive stance towards China, using tariffs as a weapon. He may also target institutions he's claimed set out to destroy him, such as the US Department of Justice. This is likely to be 4 years like we've never seen before. The world is about to see the true nature of Trump's America.
Donald Trump's decisive win was aided by a surprising increase in support from African Americans. Hispanics and lower income households hit hardest by inflation also helped fuel his victory.
Days ago, Adriana Zapata was a hopeful campaigner for Kamala Harris, even hosting the vice president at a Mexican restaurant in August.
It was just such an elated, happy moment.
But today, she watched her concede, knowing many within her community voted for Donald Trump.
Aprobado el menudo.
Adriana says Donald Trump's message on the economy cut through to Latinos, but especially his tough stance on immigration.
People who have gained citizenship or a right to be in the country legally, they know the struggle they went through to obtain that.
Latino men were among one of the biggest gains for Donald Trump.
I trust Donald Trump more than any other president we've had.
I did vote for Donald Trump, personally not because of who he is, but his policies that align with mine.
But for others, Trump's threat of mass deportations cuts deep.
A lot of Latino men have come here to the United States to seek a better life, so some have established themselves, and it seems that they have forgotten about their roots.
Here in Arizona, some within the Latino community say for too long, politicians have treated them as if they're one homogenous monolith. This result shows the diversity in their political leanings, but also in their lived experience and values.
Hallelujah. As justice in his world prevails yet again.
Trump also gained votes among young black men who feel taken for granted by the Democratic Party.
Black lives don't matter to them. Black votes matter to them.
But here too, Trump's promises of a better economy hit home.
When Trump was in office, some of my sons have their own business, and they seen that their business flourished.
A new generation with new voting habits. Isabella Higgins, ABC News, Phoenix.
In Canberra, the Prime Minister has spoken to President-elect Donald Trump to congratulate him on his victory. The federal government is now anticipating what Trump's return to power will mean for security, trade and investment. Here's National Affairs Editor Melissa Clark.
Donald Trump is headed back to the White House. And like his predecessors, Anthony Albanese will face an unpredictable US president.
No, I look forward to working with President Trump.
assuming the volatility of his first term is replicated second time around.
President Trump has campaigned on change. We shouldn't be surprised if there is change.
Trump's vow to impose tariffs on imports is the immediate concern, as it would affect Australia's direct exports to the US and China's exports made with Australian resources.
We're a trading nation, and we will continue to be advocates for free and fair trade.
Both Labor and the Coalition are optimistic Trump will back the AUKUS Defence Pact and Australia's acquisition of nuclear submarine technology.
AUKUS is providing increased capability across both our nations.
But Trump's commitment to the Paris Agreement is far less certain, given he pulled out of the Climate Change Pact last time he was in the Oval Office. The federal government saying if that happens, it won't change Australia's stance.
We are going to have to be able to prosper in a world where much of the global economy is moving to net zero.
Ambassador Kevin Rudd has been working hard to build connections with the Republicans, despite his and Anthony Albanese's sharp words about Trump in the past.
He scares the shit out of me.
We will make sure, Mr Speaker, that President Trump is not somebody to be scared of, but somebody that we can work very closely with.
The PM and the President-elect spoke on the phone today, and in the call, Trump described Australia and America as perfect friends, a congenial start. But the real work begins after Trump's inauguration in January, when the ritual courtesies give way to realpolitik. Melissa Clark, ABC News, Canberra.
Europe will be watching closely to see what ramifications Donald Trump's victory will have on the war in Ukraine, as well as security and trade. During the campaign, Mr Trump claimed he could end the war in 24 hours.
While the world stopped to watch the US presidential race, Russia's offensive in Ukraine pressed on. Trump's victory met with mixed reactions.
He will certainly try to reach a deal with Putin.
We will have to give up the territories. He will try to convince us.
They have plenty of money.
Trump has promised a quick end to the conflict.
I will have that war settled in one day.
But many fear a hasty peace deal would force Ukraine to cede land to Russia. The Ukrainian leader, nonetheless, wishing Trump well.
Today is truly a special day. I congratulate him on his victory.
Moscow withheld its congratulations, calling the US an unfriendly country.
Our president doesn't trust him much, so I think nothing will change.
Trump's victory is undoubtedly more promising for us in terms of ending military action in Ukraine.
Meanwhile, Europe's leaders lined up to welcome the president-elect.
I look forward to working with him in the years to come.
Germany will remain a reliable transatlantic partner.
The United States is a major contributor to NATO, the security pact that defends much of Europe. Donald Trump has previously toyed with the idea of pulling out, accusing members of not paying their way.
In the wake of his victory, French and German defence ministers urged NATO nations to boost contributions. Europe's leaders will be meeting in Budapest to talk security.
We cannot afford any capability gaps in our ability to defend ourselves in Europe.
Calls for unity now sounding more urgent, with Trump set to take the reins once more in the new year. Catherine Diss, ABC News, London.
One of the key challenges Mr Trump will have to tackle as president in the US is the US's relationship with Israel and its Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as the ongoing conflict in both Gaza and Lebanon. Here's Middle East correspondent Matthew Doran.
Benjamin Netanyahu needs Donald Trump. It's a pretty simple equation. The US remains the largest donor of military aid to Israel, and Israel's stockpiles are severely depleted given its continuing wars in Gaza and in Lebanon. Benjamin Netanyahu also knows Donald Trump is very popular among the Israelis he needs to prop up support for his government. And it's not necessarily a case that a new US president would turn off the tap, would stop that flow of aid, but Donald Trump is likely to drive a far harder bargain. He is, as he continues to tell us, a businessman after all, and shipping a seemingly never-ending supply of weapons to this part of the world is unlikely to be seen as a smart investment. He may well give the Netanyahu government a bit more freedom to figure out how to end the wars, but will insist a conclusion needs to be found. And with death tolls of more than 43,000 in Gaza and more than 3,000 in Lebanon, that deadline can't come soon enough. Although Donald Trump's plans, once the wars have finished, are unclear.
Coming up on 7:30, Sarah Ferguson interviews legendary journalist Bob Woodward about President-elect Donald Trump.
As President of the United States, will Donald Trump rise to the occasion? If he falls to the occasion and does some of the things that he has threatened to do, then we are in for one of the darkest periods of U.S. history and world history.
Young people under 16 will be banned from accessing social media under new laws set to land in federal parliament within weeks. The government says it's acting on the concerns of parents, but social media companies warn enforcing a ban won't be straightforward.
Australia is Plenty of young people love social media, and social media loves them back. It's a relationship the Prime Minister wants to break up.
And this one's for the mums and dads. Social media is doing harm to our kids, and I'm calling time on it.
Apps like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, X and YouTube are set to be banned for people under 16 years old.
The onus will be on social media platforms to demonstrate they are taking reasonable steps to prevent access. The onus won't be on parents or young people.
We would like to see not only the legislation introduced this year, we would like to see the legislation pass the Parliament this year.
The platforms are already pushing back. Facebook and Instagram's parent company warning, what's missing is a deeper discussion on how we implement protections. While tech industry body Digi says, to enforce a blunt ban, all Australians would have to provide their personal information, such as an ID or an image of their face, to verify their age.
We're not really hearing those granular details yet from the Albanese government about how this is going to work.
Among young people who've grown up with social media, views are mixed.
I don't know if it should be banned, but I think there should be more restrictions.
I don't think all social media is bad. I just think it should be very heavily limited.
It's just really easy to bully people on social media.
A ban is both blunt and imperfect. There's little doubt some young people will find a way around it. But the government argues it will, at the very least, empower anxious parents to say no to teenagers, insisting all their friends are online. Tom Lowry, ABC News, Canberra.
A class action on behalf of Indigenous workers in the Northern Territory who were historically paid unfair wages has returned to the federal court. Today's hearing in Alice Springs sought to approve this settlement deal worth over $202 million and decide how it will be divided up. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander viewers were advised that this story contains images of people who have died.
A dark chapter in Australian history, today turning a new leaf. Up until 1971, thousands of First Nations people in the NT were paid little to no money for their work. An historic class action brought by the workers and their relatives against the Commonwealth, reaching agreement in September, and today the federal court indicating it would approve the settlement deal.
Money-wise, is that people think that, okay, be satisfied with what you get, be thankful for what you get, but that's not the point. I mean, when you look at it, somebody's worth something, and people have worked really hard to survive, and they live very short time.
But I think there's still a lot to be recognised for the past generations. And they're the ones who suffered more, and as a result, we're still suffering the consequences from that. No amount of payment will ever take that away.
Chief Justice Deborah Mortimer hopeful compensation can be awarded as soon as possible.
What the court is interested in is trying to get money flowing for living claimants as soon as reasonably practical, and not to muck around with other legal issues.
Leading the class action, Shine Lawyers suggesting a settlement fund of up to $180 million with payments of up to $18,000 per eligible claimant, and with total legal and other costs up to $22 million. Chief Justice Mortimer telling representatives for Shine Lawyers,
they are eye-watering sums. There are many Aboriginal agencies that don't have that much money on their annual budget.
The Chief Justice was today proposing a flat rate compensation payment for claimants as opposed to the sliding scale model initially put forward. A further hearing has been set down for December. Lee Robinson, ABC News, Alice Springs.
Northern Territory Police are investigating a crash in Darwin's northern suburbs that left 2 women dead and 1 in hospital. They say a car struck 3 pedestrians at around 1:30 this morning on Trowell Road near Casuarina Beach. 2 women aged 62 and 47 were declared dead at the scene, and paramedics took a 3rd victim to Royal Darwin Hospital. Police say the vehicle fled the scene and they're calling for any witnesses or dashcam footage. It's the 2nd such incident in the same area this year, with police arresting a 21-year-old man in April after he allegedly drove over 3 pedestrians, with 2 of them later dying. Today's fatalities bring the NT's road toll to 56 compared to 26 this time last year. The consumer watchdog has approved a deal that will see Chemist Warehouse become the largest pharmacy retailer in Australia. The merger with wholesaler Sigma Healthcare will create an $8.8 billion pharmaceutical giant, which would operate nearly 1,000 stores. The ACCC says the alliance wouldn't substantially reduce competition, but it slapped conditions on the takeover, asking for an independent auditor and for the pharmacies to be allowed to switch suppliers and have their data deleted. To finance now, an American financial market surged last night in the wake of Donald Trump's victory, but the Australian markets weren't able to keep up. Here's Alan Kohler.
In the US markets right now, it's all about what they're calling the Trump trades, and there's a few of them. So let's go. The big banks like Goldman Sachs, Wells Fargo and JP Morgan, and credit card operators, American Express and Visa, surged because not only is Trump expected to cut the company tax rate, but he's also expected to cut financial regulations. The prospect of tariffs pushed up stocks like Caterpillar and steelmakers Nucor and Steel Dynamics. Tesla jumped nearly 15%, even though Trump is apparently against electric vehicles, because Elon Musk is inside the tent, so Tesla should be a winner. But the biggest winners were private prison operators, Geo Group and Core Civic. The US dollar and the long-term interest rate both went up because the tariffs would be inflationary and delay further rate cuts, although the Fed is expected to announce a 0.25% cut tonight. And there were losers as well. Renewable energy businesses like First Solar and Enphase Energy were dumped, as were copper and silver, because of concerns about the Chinese economy if that 60% tariff goes ahead. The Dow Jones average had its best day in 2 years, up 3.5%. The S&P 500 2.5% and the Nasdaq 1.4%. Surprisingly, the Chinese markets did okay, while shares in Japan and Germany fell. The Australian market went up a bit, with gains by banks and resources stocks offset by falls among retailers and Westpac going ex-dividend. Here's the usual list of commodities. Gold, silver and iron ore down, oil up. And the Australian dollar rose against all the other currencies, including the higher US dollar, and I've got no idea why. And that's finance.
The AFLW Finals Series kicks off tomorrow night with a blockbuster match between Adelaide and North Melbourne. 3-time Premiership Crow Stevie Lee Thompson says her side is embracing the underdog tag as they prepare for one of the toughest tasks in the league.
One final captain's run for the Crows as they get set to throw everything at the Kangaroos and do something no team has done this season: beat them.
No matter what we do and what they do, it's just going to be a battle to the end.
It's a tough task and both sides are using bitter memories from the past as motivation. Adelaide are out for revenge after last year's 1-point preliminary final loss.
Obviously there's probably some bittersweetness from a lot of the girls.
That confidence no different for their opponents, who are determined not to repeat last season's 17-point grand final heartbreak.
There's definitely no fear of failure. We're all just really excited.
The Bombers head west to take on Fremantle, while Hawthorn host the Lions on Sunday. And it'll be a case of the master taking on the apprentice. First-year Hawks coach Daniel Webster will face the team he helped secure a flag last year, and his mentor Craig Starcevich for the very first time.
Knowing the way Daniel wants his teams to play, I guess, is is nice for us to have the head start from that point of view.
The Tigers making the trip to Alberton Oval on a mission to turn off the power and secure their first ever finals win.
We feel like we're battle hardened and that we've grown every week because of that.
But it won't be easy up against one of the strongest home ground advantages in the league and Port's 5-game winning streak.
We know that they're number 2 for pressure in the competition. They love to surge the ball forward and that their game stands up in finals footy.
Alexia Pesce, ABC News.
Australian breakdancer Rachel Gunn, aka Ray Gunn, has retired following her highly publicised performance at the Paris Olympics. The Sydney-sider attracted worldwide attention and ridicule for her efforts in the sport's Olympic debut. Gunn, who has a PhD in cultural studies, says the reaction to her performance has prompted her to step away from competition.
The level of scrutiny that's going to be there, and people will be filming it, it'll go online, and it's just not going to mean the same thing. It's not going to be the same experience because of everything that's at stake.
Test hopefuls Nathan McSweeney and Cameron Bancroft have fallen cheaply on day 1 of the tour game against India A at the MCG. The Australia A captain McSweeney opened the batting and was dismissed for 14. Bancroft's run of outs continued when he fell for 3. Marcus Harris was 26 not out and Australia A was 2 for 53 at stumps. Earlier, Michael Neser took 4 wickets as India A was dismissed for 161. Neser left the field with a hamstring injury and won't bowl again in the game. The Kangaroos are seeking redemption in Rugby League's Pacific Cup final against Tonga in Sydney on Sunday. It's a showcase weekend for the Pacific Island teams, especially Papua New Guinea, who want to copy Tonga's success.
The Kangaroos are well rested and now their attention is on the Mate Ma'a.
It's certainly star-studded, that Tongan side, so yeah, it's good. It's good to be a part of.
Tonga's run to the final has galvanised their fans in Western Sydney, with hundreds cheering them on at training.
I imagine it's going to be a sea red come game time, and that'll help those guys.
And the Kangaroos are feeling the pressure of a home final after choking 30-0 in last year's decider against the Kiwis.
You don't want to let the jersey down. I think we didn't put in the best performance in that final last year, and that's something we don't want to do again.
There's also another fight to join Australia and Tonga in next year's Pacific Cup, with Papua New Guinea taking on New Zealand in the promotion relegation playoff.
I'm sure that we've got a lot of supporters here in Sydney, and we've got a lot of people coming, travelling from Port Moresby as well.
Led by sacked former Rabbitohs coach Jason Demetriou, the Kumuls won the Pacific Bowl.
I think it's something we've been building towards for a long time with the Kumuls, is to get the opportunity to play in these big games against the big nations.
And the chance to make a statement, with the NRL determined to set up a PNG side in the coming years. Bindi Bryce, ABC News.
And now to the weather, and tonight's weather pick showing some lightning from the East Arm boat ramp has been sent in by Chris Garth. Some isolated showers and storms in the north and west of the top end today. 34 the top in Darwin today, 37 in Berry Springs. Zooming out, Katherine reached 39, 33 in Nhulunbuy, Jabiru 40, 33 for Alice Springs, 38 degrees in Tennant Creek and Yalara. On the satellite, some thunderstorms in a cloud band stretch from WA to central and southeastern Australia, mostly clear skies elsewhere. There's a large area of low pressure over the north of the country, and there's a trough over central Australia extending to the Pilbara. Interstate tomorrow, a shower or two and becoming windy in Hobart, partly cloudy in Melbourne, a sunny 24 in Canberra, sunny for Sydney, 33 in Brisbane with a shower or two and a possible storm, a morning shower or two in Adelaide, 26 in Perth with a shower or two. Around the Territory tomorrow, 36 and sunny in Alice Springs, Ali Karung 39 with a possible afternoon storm, Tennant Creek partly cloudy and 38. In the north, 41 in Katherine, sunny in Mataranka, Galawinku mostly sunny and 34. And to the west, 38 in Batchelor, mostly sunny, and for Darwin a possible shower reaching 35 degrees. A heatwave warning remains for parts of the NT, with severe conditions expected to continue this week. Areas likely impacted include Berry Springs, Jabiru and Timber Creek. The morning high tide is at 8:46 and there's a low tide just before 4 in the afternoon. The sun will rise tomorrow at 11 past 6 and set at 6:50. A possible shower or storm for Darwin tomorrow, hot and mostly sunny for the rest of the week. And hot for Alice Springs, showers could return at the weekend. Stay with us now. Sarah Ferguson is up next with 7:30. Good night.